Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Hirobe Talks podcast. This one I'm super excited about as we dive into all things AI and data. I'm joined by Brendan Raybuck. Brendan, I've known him for some time. Brendan, for those of us that don't know you, do you mind just giving us a brief intro to yourself and your background?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tom. So Brendan Raybuck, I am a digital marketing and marketing technology SME. And I have been in that sort of greater digital marketing technology space, primarily in the enterprise space, for the vast majority of my career. I started in 2008 at Acuity Group, which is kind of a legendary company and consultancy in kind of the Adobe and e-commerce space. And from there, I've been at a variety of, I joke, most of the companies in my CV no longer exist. They've all been acquired by other organizations. There's a couple that's still around, Sitecore, Adobe, and I'm currently head of growth for the western part of the US for a Northern, which is a digital consultancy focused on the AI age.
Awesome. No, thank you for that. Like I say, I know every time we've spoken, you present yourself really well, and I think for the things that's worth knowing about digital experience and AI, you are like one of the absolute veterans. Someone I've come to ask advice about plenty of topics before. So yeah, thank you for that intro, mate. So yeah, I think one thing now looking forward, I mean, I know you've mentioned kind of a lot of the companies have been taken over where you've worked previously. I think one thing we need to discuss in this age, particularly in 2025, is AI strategy. AI, it's everywhere, right? It's every time you open LinkedIn, it's AI, like layoffs because of AI or hiring because of AI. It's kind of a minefield. So I'm really wanting to break it down on this call and kind of go into the ins and outs of that. And I thought, what better guy to do it with than you, right?
Well, I appreciate that.
No, it's all good. I think we have to talk AI strategy. So before companies, what do companies need to do before even adopting AI in the workforce, if that makes sense? Is there any key things that you would advise companies do before rolling out AI with their teams?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have been drinking from the fire hose on AI, not just as part of my career, but this week I was at Dreamforce, which, Dreamforce, everything is Agent Force this and Agent Force that. They're renaming all of the products. So I think a lot of us feel like we're being inundated with, AI, agentic AI, automation. And so it's a rapidly growing topic. I think the first thing I like to do, especially as a consultant, is with any client I work with, is take a deep breath and kind of get a lay of the land. And the first thing I like to say is, AI is really new. And I think that's okay to say that and adapt and start from that point. And the fact that, when Henry Ford invented the supply chain, or not the supply chain, but the way that he produced cars, the production line sort of assembly of automobiles, he wasn't doing it the way that we're doing today. Like, there were a lot of lessons learned. He did a lot of things wrong over decades. A lot has been learned on how to do that better. And so we're really at the very beginning of that curve. And it's okay to say that. And I think then you kind of when you take that in, you think about people and going, well, we have an entire workforce that's really not yet quite AI ready. And with any new technology, it's not just enhancing the technology and making it useful, but have you prepared the people and the processes within your organization? And when I talk to organizations about their AI strategy, I always like to start there, which is, let's take a deep breath. Let's talk about how, if you are going to commit to leveraging AI, and you really should, it is the future of work. You need to recognize it is about, involving the technology, but the people, the processes, having access to the underlying data. And I think starting there is a really good spot to kind of recognize how far it is that a lot of organizations need to go. The second thing I do is when organizations go, well, I need an AI strategy, I always think that's kind of funny. I mean, organizations today have a lot of the same things they have to do as they did, a couple of years ago before we were really deep into this, generative AI, buzz. They still have to, sell their products. They still need to connect with partners. They still need to report their finances. They still need to pay their employees and suppliers and hire and recruit. So I think a lot of companies, they talk about, what is our AI strategy? I like to kind of take a step back as well there and go, what are your business objectives? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to engage more customers? Are you trying to hire more people? Are you trying to hire less people? Look at that landscape and go, okay, where can AI help you achieve your business goals? I think a little bit of the conversation, and I think Dreamforce really hammered this to me. I think Salesforce does a great job painting the picture, and their software vendor, that's part of their role. But when you get into the weeds, that's where kind of consultancies like Northern or people like myself come in. We try and make it work for companies in the real world. And one of the challenges I've seen is when people talk about their AI strategy, it feels a little like a hammer in search of a nail, like, oh, we need AI. Okay, well, what do you want to do with it? AI. Well, you still haven't solved the business challenge, right? And in that case, you see a lot of organizations struggle adopting AI for those two reasons. One, the people and processes are ignored. And two, you're not actually focused on achieving a very specific business goal. One of the studies that came out recently was reported in Forbes, but it was an MIT study that 95% of AI pilots are currently failing. And that's, and I know, yeah, the your face, it's a huge number. And you go, well, why is that? But what was really interesting is if you read the article, it said that a lot of the tasks that AI was asked to do, the AI did them quite well. The problem was there weren't business requirements set up properly so that you weren't trying to achieve very specific goals. And two, people were unprepared to work in conjunction with an AI so that those people and those processes could then be used to achieve that business goal. And so, that is one of those things that I think ties back into the very first thing I said, which is to take that deep breath and realize this is revolutionary. It's brand new. We haven't been using it our entire lives. And there's a long way to go in making sure that you understand both how to use AI, how it can enhance your organization, and how you can adapt it properly as you move forward.
I love that. Yeah, I've actually just had to kind of take a second to reflect because the CEO won't mind me saying this. It's not a slight at all. He'll probably laugh if he's watching this. Obviously, I'll keep it confidential for now. But I had a chat earlier, kind of last week, with the CEO of a company who are wanting to basically do what you've said, right? Like adopt AI into the workforce. Came to me because he kind of knows what I do and was like, right, I need to hire 5 AI engineers. I need them now. So we sort of sat down and fleshed it out. And obviously the first thing I always do is say, okay, what exactly do you need? What's the job description? What kind of technical person am I looking for? I don't know. I need an AI engineer. We're looking to build AI. That's what I need. And we almost had a bit of a laugh about it together because I was like, let's, as you've said, right, let's dial it back. Let's look at the strategy. What are you wanting to implement? How are you going to go about that? Have you considered speaking to agencies? Have you looked at maybe support that you can have? What is it you're trying to use AI for? And he was like, I just need it. I've seen this company have got it, so I want it. And I think that's just exactly what you've said, right? It's not obviously it is the future. It's not just a buzzword, but really dialing it back, really looking at why am I as a business owner or as a business itself adopting this and really wanting to grow the company with this? How can I best do that? That's kind of the starting point, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the areas, but going kind of very more into a specific use case in marketing tech is, over the last, couple decades, we have gotten as, an ecosystem around marketing technology, really good at capturing data about customers and prospects and organizations that we want to work with, whether in a B2C or B2B environment. So we have all this data around customers and prospects. We can slice and cut that data. We can get really, really granular on how we target organizations or people. But one of the things is, if you can get that really one-to-one relationship around the data, the inevitable conclusion is that you have to write that personalized message to someone. You have to leverage that data. And if you are, like a big, if you're someone like Nike or whatnot, I mean, you have obviously then millions and millions, maybe even 1 billion customers across the planet. That's a lot of messages, personalized messages, right? And that's just not conceivable for an organization to do. And Nike is a huge organization, just as an example. They're up and comers in fashion or retail that don't have nearly the same amount of resources. And AI opens up a really great opportunity to automate that process, to be able to really take the information you have about people and write them a personalized email, create them a personalized landing page, to sort of fulfill the promise of all the data that we have been capturing for years. But to the people and process problem, if you can click a button and have 1 million messages written, how do you do QA on them? Even just the ability or imagery to make sure that the images come out right on a consistent basis. There's a whole process that you would have to build that you've never had to do before, because if you had a creative designer or a copywriter write the message, it went through a natural kind of QA editing process. Today with an AI, most organizations don't have a robust review system for managing that scale of content. So you have a fundamentally new business process that needs to be developed in order to do that. And it's one of those kind of consequences, like, okay, we can do this, but we haven't thought about that. And then if you consider that, you may have to set up regulatory, if you're saying something like pharmaceuticals or financial services, right? Well, you do need to add in a new review process to handle legal and regulatory. In financial services, they've got things like FINRA here in the US. If you're going to target that message based on data, are you meeting like GDPR requirements and things like that? So you don't have a lot, yes, you have maybe potentially the magic button set up to produce 1 million images to 1 million potential customers. But then that review process, the whole process around how you would leverage that, still needs to be built for a lot of organizations. And that's part of that preparation process for organizations to be able to activate that. So you have to, build the use case. I can now produce a lot of content, but you have a consequence of, I need to do all these things in order to prepare for this AI-centric world. The nature of work inherently changes.
Yeah. But,
it's funny. I think you and I talked about this a while ago, just as that we have a relationship between the two of us. I joked, it almost reminds me a little bit of the industry when I was in 2008, when I got started. And web content management tools at the time, just, which seems ubiquitous today, but at the time there were a lot of organizations who were still just using HTML code to run their website. Like every time they wanted to change, they'd call a developer. It was either an internal developer at their agency, and some front-end code developer would go in and just, make the change. And then, Omniture came around, which was eventually acquired by Adobe, and some of the older analytics tools like Core Metrics and Google Analytics came out, and marketers could start seeing, I can now make a change. I want to make a change to my website. I can see in the data that this landing page, this aspect of our website is not helping. So I want to make that change. And then the business inhibitor became, that calling that developer and making that change takes a lot of time. So the content management tools, which had been around, really since the 90s, started getting adopted in earnest to give marketers that interface. But early on in those processes, when I'm implementing a content management tool for the organization that had never touched it before, I mean, some of the most difficult conversations I had early on in my career were about the publishing workflows for customers,
That's insane.
because they've never gone through a process of having a publishing workflow through a content management tool before. I was at a financial services organization in 2000, I think 11. If there are any friends of mine watching this podcast who've known me for a long time, they'll probably know the company I'm referring to. And they had this really robust review process in their previous custom built platform. And it revolved around having almost 100 people review even the most minor of content changes, because they were going through that custom code, thing. So they wanted to make sure every little thing wasn't broken, an HTML developer didn't make a mistake. But if you're just changing content in a CMS based world, you don't really need that many people. And it was almost shocking to them to go, hey, look, we can make the change in context. The author can see it. We can have a manager review it. If it's an important content change or something's critical about that, then maybe we need to go through, maybe a legal or regulatory review, which would be a third step. But you really don't have more than, 4 or 5 people involved on the process versus the 100 that you used to have. And it's a fundamentally large business process change. And it was very hard for that organization to adapt and reorganize themselves in a way to do it. And I feel like in a lot of ways, we're at that same inflection point where we need to take the people and the processes slowly across the line in order to, adapt to this new world.
Yeah, and I think, that's really insightful, and I think brings us nicely onto a situation that I think is very, very much at the forefront of people's minds. It's almost the chicken and the egg situation, right? I think when you're looking at the implementation of AI, the rollout of AI, and the fact that it is going to dominate the next, 10 plus years in tech, way beyond that, right? It's the future, it's here to stay, it's not going anywhere. Now, is that going to create more jobs? Is that going to be, we need people to actually monitor the AI and actually to implement it and to design, or are we looking at a situation? I mean, you see it in companies now, right? Profits are up because companies have got rid of entire divisions where AI is doing what a team used to do. And so there's almost a little bit of fear about it, a bit of hesitation. But I've seen lots of counter arguments where companies are saying, yeah, we've done that, we've saved the budget, we've reinvested it into these new business areas and employed X amount of new people, like reorged and restaffed these positions. What's your opinion on AI? Will it kind of create more jobs, or what's your thoughts?
So I don't think I'm no futurist, I would say. So I think on the long-term side, I would probably let someone who's put a lot more thought into it. In the short term, what I am seeing is that there are examples of job loss as a result of AI. But I think a large percentage of them, and this is me talking to people, is that some of the companies that have laid people off and have used the excuse that we're going to leverage AI for some of these things, there's a lot of examples of those organizations used AI a little bit as an excuse to lay people off. And the AI wasn't necessarily filling some of those tasks particularly well. There's been some examples of people getting hired back. And so I think in the short term, that while there have been some exceptions to this, I think there's not that much job loss today. I think as a result of AI, I think it's being used as an excuse. The other thing I like to think about when I think about like jobs and kind of the future of work is, does automation help you get into areas that you haven't been before? So there's one thing if an AI can do a job that a person can do, and then you remove that person from the equation. But does that open up new opportunities? Are there things that you can't do today that you would then move people into? And in the case of digital marketing, I think the example I gave earlier is, well, you can't write 1 million messages to 1 million people, right? So the AI is capable of doing something that your organization would like to do, create personalized messages for every prospective client or prospect. At the same time, you can't do that today. So there's the AI can help you fill that gap. And so it isn't necessarily in those cases replacing people. It's filling the gap that people today cannot do. And as a result, it opens up, okay, how am I going to manage that process? How am I going to tie data back into things? How am I going to ensure that the AI is working properly? How do I QA that? And that opens up more opportunities. I have this story I tell about another early client of mine. This was 2010. And it's a major retailer. And I tell this story because I think it is quite an amusing one, the way it happens. But it was one of my first big projects, and I'm a business analyst. And I am in my first meeting alone with the VP of e-commerce at this company. We're sitting in his office, and his office has a glass, large and top to bottom glass window, and his team is all out in the cubicles outside. And I'm trying to sound smart, and I'm asking that junior BA question, to start off the meeting. What does success look like to you? And he looks at me and goes, Brendan, I want to fire half the people sitting outside this door. And I'm shocked. I'm a little young, a little naive. I'm also wondering, how do I write this down as a business requirement? Right? Okay, want to fire people. Like, you can't do that. You got to come up with some, corporate speak, improve efficiencies to lower costs, right? Or, something like that. But I'm sort of flabbergasted. And then he elaborated, which is that the website had all sorts of problems with it. Their big e-commerce website around product information, around just generating the look and feel of the website. The team just spent so much time bug fixing is what they were doing. And he's like, if I can just hit publish and the web page or new product goes online and it just looks all right, like that saves our team a ton of time and energy. And that's my goal. And it was interesting as I rolled off that project. Eventually they went forward. I ended up bumping into him at a conference like 4 or 5 years later. And I reintroduced myself. I told the story a little bit to him, and he's, oh, I remember that now. I remember you now. And I'm like, so I have a question for you. Did you lay off half that team? And he just starts laughing at me like crazy. And he goes, Brendan, the team is 25% larger now. And I said, so was the project a failure? And he goes, no. What happened was we didn't have to fix bugs on the website the same rate that we had before. So give or take, probably we maintained the website with about half the people we had then. But every person who we didn't have to do that rolled off and did something else. They built new landing pages. They added, A/B testing to the website. And, this is 2000, I think, the early half of the 2010s, right? So we're not talking massive, complex stuff that we talk about today. But they were doing a lot of things that actually added revenue to their e-commerce channel. And each person that rolled off from a maintenance thing into a revenue generating position really made the company more money than they spent on the resource. So they were like, we were hiring because every person we hired grew the company's revenue. It's just that they weren't able to do any of those things when they were in basically troubleshooting, a bug fixing mode the entire time. The analogy that I'll never forget this, he used to me was, you're constantly in a state of drowning and you're just trying to hold your head up above water. And you realize you probably, in order to kind of stabilize yourself, you probably should swim to the end of the pool, and hold on to the side. But you're struggling so hard to keep your head above water. You don't feel like you can do that. Once you get to that side of the pool eventually and can hold on side, you have the ability to take a deep breath, look around, stabilize yourself, and think about what you're doing. And that was what they felt like they're doing. They were just trying to prevent themselves from drowning. And then what we did with this project with them was get them to go to the side of the pool and be able to hold on the side and stabilize themselves. And that is really where I think the AI is going to head, at least in the short or medium term. is that there's so much, like, we can't analyze all the data we're catching about customers. We can't yet build those personalized messages that are one-to-one today just with people. So AI, I think, to a large extent, is filling that gap. And as a result, while some of the business processes will change and some of the jobs will change the nature of what they are, I don't think in the short, medium term, it really is going to do that much job loss overall. Obviously, technology continues to get better. And I think over the longer term, like I said, someone will have maybe a better idea about that. But I view it more so the nature of work is going to change than it's going to wholesale replace people at a large scale quite yet.
Yeah, and like I say, we're not. I'm obviously not a theorist, but I think I imagine back to, say, like the late 80s, when people were talking about the internet and all this things coming and all this jazz. I'm sure there'd be fear then around, okay, are we gonna lose this, that, the other. I think change is scary, but I think it's how we kind of adopt that change. So yeah, I think, and yeah, it's really interesting seeing examples of companies who, like you say, they have made layoffs because of AI, and then have actually rehired like 6 months later, or grown a certain part of the business that's doing, basically hiring a load of AI people. I don't know. I think there's an element of excuse there as well, like you mentioned. I think, as someone who's on the front lines with it kind of daily, Brendan, what have you seen in terms of businesses implementing strategies? How have you seen AI implemented well with certain companies?
Yeah. Where I've seen organizations have success, first identifying the nail, understanding that there is a problem that they want to solve for, that AI can be involved in that process. So, especially in digital marketing, content creation is a really big one, imagery manipulation, even just taking an image that you want to put on a landing page, but you may also want that within Instagram and your meta ads, and potentially on your Google ad spend. Those type of things, like just getting the aspect ratios correctly very quickly, is a great example for AI to help with. So, but understanding a business challenge that you have. The second part of that, I think, that organizations are having success with is, okay, if I'm going to leverage AI to do that, what is the business process I need to have to insert people into that? I don't think today that AI has the ability to do everything a person can do. So you need people in the loop to manage that process, to evaluate content that's being produced, to tell the AI when it messed up so that it can continue to get better. So taking a step in understanding what your business processes are. And often where I see organizations have success is taking a small use case like that and then building that process from there to manage just that kind of simple use case. And then when they've got that as a well-oiled machine, you expand upon that. So then, okay, it's not just, I want to resize images for all the places I'm going to put it. I'm going to start having it generate some of the images from scratch. So I think it's really about a process of baby steps to slowly expand over time. The third thing that I think that is also missed a lot within companies adapting AI is understanding where you're getting your data from. So the AIs themselves, right, rely on data to produce whatever they're doing. And I think the challenge that some organizations are having is they're using a generic AI. Some marketers just have, on their screen, just ChatGPT open, and they're asking them to do something. And sometimes you have to do if you really want something very specific, you have to do a very long, elaborate prompt in order to get that. And sometimes that can even be, even through troubleshooting that, take a lot of time that doesn't necessarily help the user that much. But for an organization that has a lot of data, you want to do things like with content creation. What is the look and feel of your brand? What is the rules around that? What's the brand consistency like? What is your color scheme? What's the tone of voice you use when you write a message? Are you fun or playful? Are you professional? These are all the things organizations, marketing and branding departments spend huge amounts of time on. Well, that's data, that is information that you want to provide to the AI. Same with like if you want to analyze data from web and email and mobile and all of the various digital touch points, even brick and mortar stores and your rewards programs, is that data provided in a way that AI can analyze it? Is the data integrated across channel? Are you able to identify a single person as they move from store to mobile app to email to web? So layering your data foundation is really important so that the AIs can then sit upon that and go, okay, I can see the emails that we're putting out. I'm seeing the website. I can then understand what our brand is, and I can create messages that feel like that brand. Or I'm analyzing data based on my customers, and it's set up in a way that that data is properly integrated and laid out so that I can do that deep analysis and find those opportunities for the organization that they may not be able to see. So the data foundation, I think, is really critically important. Some of where, and I think especially coming out of Dreamforce, that is an assumption that I have access to the data that isn't being talked about, but is really foundational to the AI work. I think Salesforce makes that argument at Dreamforce because it makes the assumption that if you're in Salesforce Commerce Cloud or Salesforce Marketing Cloud and you're using their agentic systems on top of it, well, of course we have access to the data. It's our commerce platform and it's our marketing cloud platform, or our sales cloud or revenue cloud or whatever, Salesforce tool you're using. You should make the assumption we have the data because you have the platform underneath. But there's also a question of is that data organized in a way and integrated properly to make sure the AI can use it well. So having that underlying foundation of infrastructure that the AI can rely on is also critically important. We do a lot of work here at Northern in digital asset management and content production and content life cycles and content supply chain. And so if you're doing, leveraging something like a custom Firefly model or an AI tool to create content, right? Well, where is it getting that? Well, it should get it from your websites, your emails, but also just the digital asset management tool that is the foundation of storing all of the branding and imagery you ever have. Like that actually becomes not just a repository for marketers to be able to go access historically created images. It's a record of everything your brand is and was over time. It's like a ledger, a journey into the past. And so you could actually provide that as data to your AI system to go, well, I need you to feel like who we are. And that becomes that record. So building those foundational systems too, I think is also really important. When I advise customers, often talking about their AI roadmap, that's often the first place I start is if you do not have your data, whether it's your customer data, whether it's the branding information, if you do not have that organized, you need to do those. They're almost prerequisites to adding AI into your system. And then, of course, adding the people and the processes along with the technology in order to make that all work properly.
Awesome. No, I love that. And I think, again, it's clear why, I suppose so many clients trust you as well, right? With that kind of level of insight. I think really good points about, the Dreamforce thing as well. And I just think, given, this podcast has been requested for some time, right, that we do one that focuses on AI, particularly within kind of commerce or CMS or whatever it may be, and how AI will kind of impact that as well. So I think, those points that you've just made, really, really kind of relevant as we approach the 2026 roadmap and kind of as companies are buckling down and thinking, okay, how can we now bring in AI with the tools that we've already got? Or how can we bring in new tools and then leverage AI? They're conversations that we're seeing constantly, and having on daily. Really appreciate your time, Brendan. I think wrapping it up, I suppose, what's next for yourself? I know you've just come back from the conference, as you mentioned. Are you doing anything kind of off the back of that? How are things going for you in the new role, or anything exciting that you're working on?
Yeah, so I'm really excited to have joined. I'm about 3 months into my stint here at Northern. It's a really exciting. What we're doing here is we're building an agency actually for the AI world. And that includes helping organizations managing their Google and Meta ad spend and helping them drive customers through those channels, doing marketing technology work around things like the Adobe or Salesforce ecosystems, leveraging AI to improve the time to market, help organizations move faster, help them, architect their business processes so that they can leverage AI within content creation, data analysis, engagement with their customers, personalization, A/B testing. And then, leveraging it internally for our, development teams and users so that we can work faster as well and make each one of our people more productive. So that's really kind of the goal of Northern, is to be kind of a digital consultancy for the AI age, helping organizations leverage these tools. But as I said earlier in the podcast, a little bit of that is, helping organizations figure out, what's the nail and not be the hammer in search of a nail when it comes to AI. So we're being really purposeful when we engage with our customers, and we take that kind of deep breath and that step back and go, okay, what is the business challenge you're trying to solve here? And how can we help you, either through our consulting or our resources, to help you accelerate and meet that business challenge, leveraging AI to do it?
I love that. And I think it's a really responsible way of doing it as well, because I think there's so much kind of unknown about it. I think it's really nice to hear of someone who actually wants to understand the business needs of a client and kind of make sure that the strategy is right, and that they can support them in the best way possible, not just, oh yeah, you're doing this, here's a load of services and things that we can sell to which is...
There's one thing I do say about the professional services industry, which I think is going through a pretty big transition because of AI. I joke a little bit, and maybe this is a little bit of a backhanded compliment to or insult to some of the large consulting companies in the world. I think the era of the back the bus up consultants, bring a lot of large consultant companies. What they do is they bring really great, fantastic experts to the table for clients. But where they really make the money is after they've come up with that strategy. They pile up 100 consultants across the globe to come and fix the problem. And I think in the age of AI, you need to be a lot more nimble. That you need to bring really smart consultants to the table. You need to bring industry experts, but they need to focus on a business problem. And through things like automation and AI, you want to do more empowering than just, hey, I'm going to pile up 100 people and make money that way. I know this is not the nature of our conversation today, but I think the nature of professional services, not just in marketing tech, but as every corporate function, whether it's legal tech, finance tech, technology supporting IT processes, or, companies like Workday that manage hiring and HR stuff. Each one of these corporate business processes is undergoing a transformation as a result of AI. And I think the professional services organizations that focus on all those areas, because of the AI field, are fundamentally going to change the nature of their work in supporting clients moving forward. And yeah, I think being purposeful about that, I think the age of just piling up 100 consultants, the back the bus up consulting process, I just say is I think going to disappear, and the nature is going to be leaner, meaner, but I think inherently more strategic.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think we've seen that the professional services landscape is changing, and I think the way that professional services kind of approach the market and their clients and all that jazz is going through that change at the minute. Which is certainly a very interesting time for us that work in it, right? Brendan, I know you're a busy guy. I really, really appreciate your time. I think your insights on this have been really, really valuable, especially across the AI space. Thank you again for joining me on the podcast, Brendan.
No problem. Thank you for having me, Tom.
You're most welcome, bud. Thanks for watching, viewers. Really appreciate it. If you've got any questions, I'll link Brendan's LinkedIn below this video as well. Have a good one.
Thank you.